Yo, what's good? Big Z here, back with another video, and today I'm going to show you guys how to make this. So the song is called Get Up by Retrovision. There's a ton of stuff going on here, so let's get right into it. As always, all the MIDI files and presets will be linked down below. So let's start with that lead sound, which is 4 different layers. Here's what they all sound like together. So there's really one main lead layer, and everything else is just kind of supporting that. So here's what the main lead sounds like. It's a really cool sounding lead. So I have all these effects over here going on. Here's what it sounds like without all these external effects. So you can see it's just a really basic sound without all those effects on it. So it's just like a half pulse wave in silent, which you can get down here, half pulse. And it just has one voice of unison with the re-trigger checked. And the only other thing going on here is just I'm adding some distortion, some overdrive distortion in the built-in distortion plugin, and then I'm adding the built-in compressor in silent as well. So let's get into these external effects and see how they can make this lead sound so cool. So first up is this really cool plugin called Manipulator, and it's from Infected Mushroom. And it's a really cool pitch plugin where you can mess around with the pitch, the formant, the harmonics, and you can do a bunch of cool things with it. So all I have going on here is I'm just changing the formant of this lead and putting it up 17 semitones. So I felt it sounded the most like the original, around 17 right there, so that's where I kept it. So then after that in my chain, I'm using the Serum Effects plugin. So without it, here's what it sounds like. Then with it, I'm just adding a tiny amount of dimension expander. This phaser is not even on actually. And then I have a formant filter here with the drive all the way up. That's really just adding some drive and some cool like vocal sounding effects to the sound. So then after the Serum Effects plugin, I just have some OTT compressing it a little more. Then I have some EQ boosting the highs and taking out everything below like 230 hertz. Then I have some kickstart, a really short kickstart on there, because this sound is really heavily sidechain, but just for like a split second at the beginning of every quarter note. So that was like the main lead there. So here's what the other layers sound like together that just back up and complement that main lead. So that first layer I've named Reverb Lead, and that's because I've literally just bounced this main lead to audio, and then I've added some reverb at 100% wet, but I brought the decay down all the way to 0.10 seconds with no pre-delay and the depth all the way down at 0. That just puts the sound in like a cool little space. Here's what it sounds like before and after. Then I just have a couple other random things on this channel. I have Soundtoy's little altar boy moving the formant up, just to make sure the sound really isn't interfering with the other layer, because I did just bounce it straight from that layer. So after that, the next layer is a serum layer. It's just a really basic patch. And it's just a retro speaking wavetable from the vowel section in Serum. And I'm not doing anything with the envelopes or LFOs or anything. In the effects section, I'm just adding some distortion, some multi-band compression, and I'm adding this formant filter again. And in this one, I'm cutting everything off below like 700 hertz. That's why it's just in the high end of the frequency spectrum. And I'm also adding some OTT and some Little Altar Boy again, just messing with the formant. Then the last lead layer is just straight up white noise from Silent, just to give the lead some high-end crunch. So again, here's what all the leads sound like together now. It's really just all those tricks messing around with the formant and the formant filters that I showed you that give it that really cool vocal vowel-y sounding effect. So now I'll mute those leads and you'll be able to hear some cool synth and bass stuff going on here. Just a bunch of like quick synth chord fills and bass fills. So Retrovision always has a bunch of this type of stuff in his songs just to give it a lot of variation and keep things interesting. So I'll start with this funky chord sound here. Here's what it sounds like by itself. And that is really just a saw wave in Serum, except I'm using this LFO right here to modulate the fine pitch. And that's what gives it that vibrato effect. And I have it set to a 16th note rate. And that's really all that sound is. This main chord stab sound is pretty cool. It just adds some energy at the beginning of each bar. Then we've got this piano fill right here. And that is just a piano from True Pianos. It's the amber piano. And to make the piano sound a lot cooler, I added some effects. Here's what it sounds like without the effects. Then with them. So I added a ton of bit crusher, and then I added like a funk effect from this pedal board plugin that's built into Logic. Then I added some OTT, some EQ, and then some phaser to cap it all off to make it more funky sounding. So I know there's a ton of stuff going on in the song, but we're almost done, I promise. There's just a couple bass sounds left. So that square bass sound is just a straight up square wave in Serum with 3 voices of unison and a little bit of detune. And I'm using this envelope to affect the cutoff of this low pass filter. Then over in the effects section, I'm just adding some tube distortion on there. Then I'm compressing it with Wave's Renaissance compressor. And I've got some EQ on there, just leaving room for the sub bass. Then there's this other saw bass that's pretty basic as well. And that is also a Serum patch. It is just a saw wave with 1 voice of unison, except in the effects section I'm adding a ton of diode 2 distortion. Then I'm also adding a formant filter on there with the drive all the way up to give it a cool character. Retrovision uses bass sounds like this a lot in his tracks. And this one, just like the saw bass sound, I'm adding some Renaissance compression from Waves. And then I have an EQ just making room for the sub bass again. So as you can see, there are a ton of different layers going on in this track. I'll play the full thing again at the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Spotify below. Other than that, I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.